Hello. Hi. How are you doing? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Igho, and today we're going to be talking about the practice of enjoyment and self-respect. Two things, two slightly different philosophies, I guess, that have lately been coming together in my mind in a very interesting way that has been helpful for me, and I think might be helpful for you too. So I don't know what you're doing this morning, whether you're on your way to work, school, or you're just at home. Wherever you are, I hope you are well taken care of. I hope you are feeling hopeful. I hope you are having a good day, or your day is off to a good start. Okay, so full transparency, it's been a little difficult to organize my thoughts on this, and I've been struggling with it for the past couple of days to mostly organize everything the way it's been swirling around in my mind. So I'm hoping that in sharing them and, kind of putting them outside of my body, this mortal shell, that it will help me actually turn them into something more tangible and coherent and helpful to you in the way that they've been helpful to me. So we are going to go on quite a journey here, but I think we'll make it work. Okay, so right now you are on your life's journey, right? And you probably have something in the works, whether it's your job, school, a vocation or a skill that you're learning, a project that you're working on. Maybe right now your main focus is taking care of your baby, your family, your marriage, your relationship, whatever it is. And for the past couple of weeks, at least like for most of the month of February, I have been getting a reminder, and that reminder is what I'm going to give to you, is for you to make sure that you're taking a moment to really check in with yourself on whether or not you are actually actively enjoying the life that you're living as you're living it. And at the center of everything that I've been learning is this realization that is, a hard pill to swallow, is while our minds can grasp something really quickly, a concept, a lesson that you're learning, it always takes longer to have those lessons go from our minds, from the moment when we learn them, to our hearts and our souls. It takes a much longer time for a lesson to really sink in, usually over multiple cycles, than the relatively small amount of time it takes to learn that lesson. A quote that I saw and I didn't save, so I don't know where I got it from, but I remember writing it down, and it says, your soul doesn't move at the speed of your cognition. It could take you a year to really know something that you intellectually believe in a second, in a moment. And it can be really frustrating and or liberating. For me, it was both, to know that what you're learning in the moment might take months, even years, to fully integrate into who you are, right? For you to fully become the embodiment of that lesson that you have just learned that made so much sense to you the first time you learned it. And so I found that a huge reason for the frustration is really the shame and disappointment that you feel with yourself or within yourself. I talked about it a couple of videos ago, I think on one of this morning chats, when I use a growing plant as a metaphor for the process of becoming, of really like becoming yourself from the beginning stages to the end of whatever stage that you find yourself in, on whatever journey that you find yourself on, but specifically related to like personal growth and development and self-expression and fully embodying who you are. And I actually think that the fact that I am in this video coincidentally building on what I've already learned, but now in a new way, in a way that just further drives home the lesson that I had already learned at one level. That in itself, the fact that I've learned this lesson, or I'm learning this lesson again, is in fact proof of the very point that I'm going to try to make, what I'm trying to make, that the deep sinking feeling of disappointment that you feel with yourself when you're watching yourself be different from what you want to be is actually a normal human response to the time that it takes for things to unfold. And part of that self-disappointment is because you're putting yourself on a pedestal, but not necessarily the present you. You're putting that version of you that you think you're going to be on a pedestal. So the idealization of that person that you want to be, that has all the things that you want, creates a very deep emotional struggle that, at least for me, was really difficult to pinpoint the source of, because at first I just thought like the sense of uneasiness that I was having on a daily basis was because I was frustrated, and there were all these like superficial reasons I was giving for why I was feeling the way I was feeling and feeling so like dissatisfied with myself and my life, and the ways in which I was showing up that I felt like was subpar, in a very like, I feel like I should be getting better results than this, or I feel like I should be better than this, or I should have moved on from this at this point, right? So the results I was getting that I was falsely classifying as no effort because I wasn't seeing like tangible results. I was considering all the effort that I was putting in meaningless because I wasn't seeing anything coming out of it. That deep sense of frustration was what I was attributing to many things. I now realize were mostly superficial and was coming from this instead, from not being cognizant of the fact that like it takes time. It takes a much longer time than you anticipate for things to unfold, and it takes facing the same thing multiple times in different phases and different stages for it to really sink in that it is absolutely okay for things to take as long as it takes. And honestly, that's not something anyone can know for you. That's not something you can read in a book. That's not knowledge that you can acquire by watching inspirational videos like this or by reading whatever it is that you want, or taking a class or whatever. That is something that you're just going to have to know from putting in practice of showing up as often as you can. So because we tend to idealize the version of us that is who we want to be, the struggle that creates is this like mix of feelings that is feeling really inadequate about where you currently are in the present moment, a very overwhelming sense of distance between where you are and where you want to be, and then the persistent shame about your current state of being or your current circumstances, right? And what that does is it creates a sense of longing, like you're in a perpetual state of longing to become a different version of yourself. But at the same time, that feeling also like really amplifies the fear that you're never going to reach this thing. You're never going to reach this point that you think will make you happier or make you more fulfilled or whatever it is that you're looking for. And then if you throw in the time aspect of it, the internal conflict becomes more intense when you want to really speed up the transformation process, or you want to like transform quickly into the version of yourself that you want to be, the so-called better version of yourself, whether that is someone that is more enlightened, more knowledgeable, more confident, more liberated, or, you know, just happier overall. But in a very roundabout way, and I'm pretty sure I've said this about shame before at some point, that shame actually does not inspire change the way we think it does. Like shaming yourself does not inspire any kind of like worthwhile change or any kind of long-lasting, sustainable change. And so in the roundabout way that a shame cycle works, the urgent need, the need for rapid transformation is very fierce. It's very like unconsuming, and a very subtle but like very dangerous thing that it does is it'll lead you to become isolated in your struggle, right? There's a sense of like self-inflicted aloneness that you can start to feel when you feel like there are no tangible manifestations of the fact that you are growing or your life is getting better. You know, you just kind of feel stuck and stalled. And the first step towards like managing, I don't even know if managing is the right word, but managing all of this when it's happening to you is to first bring yourself down from the pedestal. Not the you that you currently are, but the quote unquote future you that you think is so much better than the person that you are. And you need to bring them down from the pedestal. You need to like humanize them a lot more, because shame cannot coexist healthily within that like gradual process of change and growth. I actually think, or I've come to like deeply learn and believe that slow growth towards something is often the most natural way for things to evolve, but it is also the most sustainable, because you don't want to just like wake up with all the things that you think you want, because there's a lot to handle. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with being a bigger person, a healthier person, a more hardworking person, a more enlightened, more knowledgeable person, right? There's a lot of responsibility that comes with being the person that you think you want to become. So to want to like speed that process up overnight is not the wisest thing to do. It's just very difficult to see it in the moment, right? So I understand that. The missing key I've come to learn is sustained self-respect. And usually I would say self-compassion, or at least if I had this thought at this time last year, I think I would have said self-compassion and not self-respect. And of course, there's nothing wrong with self-compassion, but I think the reason why I would have leaned more towards self-compassion as a concept, or I don't know what the word is for it, is because a lot of the work that I've had to do on myself, on my healing, growth, personal journey, it has been directed towards like addressing the feelings and the needs of a younger version of me. me. And I think self-compassion is very appropriate for that and was more necessary in my younger years, so as I was growing into being an adult, what it means for me to be an adult. But lately I've been leaning more towards self-respect, like the more I've been, just experiencing life, because I think that's what current me needs a little bit more of. And not that a younger version of you doesn't need self-respect. I'm not like removing one from the other. They very much, are a swirl happening together. But to be more intentional about the practice of self-respect is something that I am like currently learning. It's actually what informed like all of this. So the way I've come to think about it is like self-compassion feels more warm, but a little passive, like to be soft with yourself, to be very like accepting of yourself. Whereas self-respect feels to me to be more active in the ways that it has to be put into practice. And in that sense, it is like just one step above putting self-compassion into practice for yourself, like practicing being compassionate towards yourself. Joan Didion has an essay called On Self-Respect, and I've talked about it on one of my vlogs before when I read it like a while ago. It's an essay that I strongly recommend, and I will find a link to it online and see if I can leave it in the description box below. But something she said in the essay that really stuck with me is the dismal fact is that self-respect has nothing to do with the approval of others or with reputation. And she says that it has more to do with character, and she defined character as the willingness to accept responsibility for one's own life. That is character. That's how she defines character. And it really stuck with me and came up when I was thinking more about this lately, because the problem with being raised in the kind of society that we're raised in is that you're constantly being taught to associate character with reputation and with more superficial things that always leads to you seeking the approval of a select group of people or like the public in general. And when those two things are associated so much with each other, you start to internalize the idea that protecting your reputation is the most valuable thing. It is more important to be seen a certain way and to present your life in a certain way than it is to actually have your life feel a certain way, or it's for your life to take whatever amount of time it takes for it to get to whatever point you want it to get to. So how does that connect to joy, or how does that connect to like enjoying your life? Great question. I'm so glad you asked. The connection is, and I feel like I've spent like the first part of this video just like doing the setup for this particular part. The connection is a huge part of enjoying your life is that you're going to have to continuously teach yourself to not be as concerned with how your life looks to people and to start being more concerned with making sure it feels the way you want it to feel as you're living in it. You want your life to feel good to you while you're living in your life, not wait to be joyful in your life when it finally starts to look a certain way. And it's hard. It is hard. This is something I've been learning over and over and over again. So I'm not even saying this from a place of like you're going to learn this and it's going to stick once. No, this is a lesson you're going to be reminding yourself of often, because it's a reminder that you will need. But I wrote down that the biggest changes happen when we transform the contempt we feel about our current state and our self-disappointment into respect. Respecting ourselves and acknowledging the natural process of moving from knowing something to truly understanding it. You have to accept that you will make mistakes. You have to accept that you can and are capable of building up the courage to course correct if necessary, to change your mind, to try a different route, and also accept that you may face embarrassment. And I put embarrassment here in quotes because you almost also have to choose to allow yourself to be embarrassed, to allow yourself to be cringe. You can absolutely redefine what is cringe to you. I think of all the most like impactful people in the world, even the people who create negative impact, have to let go of the hold of shame over them. Like no one who has done anything worthwhile in the public or even like caused like internal change within themselves has done it without risking being embarrassed, without risking being seen trying, which is not always a pretty sight. I think most of society, as we've seen, like it's always waiting to celebrate you when you have hit the pinnacle of something. Very few people will appreciate you while you're actually like in the dredge doing the work that is most of the work that you will do. So sometimes the biggest upgrade you experience is not going to be the material changes in your life, but it is more a change in the way that you are experiencing your life. That is where your biggest upgrade is going to be. So you have to take responsibility for all aspects of your life, and that includes your joy as well as all your shortcomings and all the things that you perceive as your mistakes or your flaws, because you cannot hate yourself into being a person that you love. That is not how the process works. We have so many rich and famous people who are examples of this, and that's why I stopped typing. But yeah, we have so many famous people who are examples of people who have achieved so much like material success, but you can still tell whenever they show up that they hate themselves. They hate themselves and they hate their lives. They hate a life that is filled with more quote unquote blessings that people would die for, are dying for, right? People whose circumstances in life are so much better, but their lives are still not enviable, because you can tell that the experience that they're having in that life is just not, it's not a joyful one. And of course, there's going to be like that group of people who say things like, well, I would rather cry in a Lamborghini than be happy in a what. I hear that, like, sure, like make whatever choice you want to make, but I'm assuming if you're watching this video and you've gotten to this point that you actually want to enjoy the life that you're in, and on some level you know that material success and having all the things, having things is good. I'm not a minimalist. I like having things. I like having stuff, nice stuff, but you know that that's not going to make you happier. It's not going to make you actually enjoy your life. I'm not saying don't want more. I'm not saying don't strive for more in your life. Like, don't develop yourself. That is hopefully like you are cognizant enough to know that like that's not the conversation that we're having here. I've done a lot of creative endeavors in my life, and being a creative is a constant test of your patience, of your perseverance. You know, how much you're going to show up, whether or not someone else is showing up to be with you, to listen to or watch or experience what you have to share, you know? Yeah. So of course, like life can be really hard to navigate sometimes. And no matter your age or your current circumstances, you cannot escape life without some kind of difficulty. Of course, if you want to engage in struggle Olympics, you will always find someone who's doing way worse or way better than you. But generally speaking, if you are lucky to live long enough, you will experience something or another, and you will definitely be made aware of your flaws. You know, that is just like, it's inescapable. So like I said, like a disclaimer, this is not in any way to diminish the very specific hardships that people face, whether it is self-inflicted or systemic. You know, you shouldn't go around being ignorant of the things that does make things harder and more unfair for some people than others. But I do want to share a reminder that you have quite a bit more control over your perspective than you think you do. And I think that sometimes you have to treat misery, okay, maybe misery is too strong a word, but I don't know, sadness, yeah. You have to treat misery or the hard emotions like you would treat fear. I learned this from Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, because she had this section where she was talking about learning to travel with fear, learning to move through whatever you want to do with it, not wait for it to subside. And I think like you have to treat misery in the same way, where you say you can get into the car with all the other things that I'm traveling with, you know, the fear, the insecurities, the occasional lack of self-confidence, the doubt. You can tell them to get in the car with your joy, your creativity, your self-expression, your gift for lighting up a room, all the different gift talents that you have. You can put all those things in the car together and give them a very good talking to, you know, like saying, I know the thing I want to do is hard. I know the changes that I want to make might be hard, but I'm going to do them anyway. I'm going to do this thing anyway. So if I can't leave you behind, I'm not going to stay stuck here and wait for you to go away. I'm going to put you in the car, but you are not allowed to contribute to the conversation. You are not allowed to touch the radio. You are not allowed to drive the car under any circumstances, but you can stay in the back where you belong. We will all go together, because the only other option that you have is to live your life waiting for all the negative emotions to dissipate, to be lessened before you do anything, to wait until you are the most confident version of you before you show up. Because if you do that, you're going to be stuck. Your only other alternative is not an alternative at all. It is just you being in the same spots, which I'm going to tell you right now, you already know it's not it's not a less frustrating option. It's actually more frustrating. That's the beautiful thing about life is, you know, like it's really hard to do the thing, but it's really hard not to have a podcast episode on choosing your hard. You have to choose which hard you want to live with, because either way, you're going to have to be making some hard choices, baby. Okay? And I also want to add the fact that you don't owe your pain and your sadness any kind of loyalty, because what I've observed or what I've learned is that it can seem easier to hold on to pessimism or sadness and to hold on to all the hurtful things that have happened to you, the very valid hurtful things that have happened to you, to hold on to them as some sort of proof that something did in fact happen to you. You're not the way you are simply because that's the way you are, right? It can seem easier to hold on to all those things, but you don't owe your sadness any kind of loyalty. You don't owe your pessimism any kind of loyalty. You can choose to be happier. You can choose to be more positively engaged with the things that have happened to you without necessarily negating the fact that they did happen to you. The real point of all of this is, and some of these statements are going to seem a little, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, like insane. No, counterintuitive. It's going to seem a little counterintuitive, but I can tell you how helpful it has been for me to implement this in my life. So what I always say to myself is like, if I'm going to doom scroll on my phone, I'm going to enjoy it. If I'm going to read, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm not going to be on my bed doom scrolling, or I'm not going to be on my bed like spending hours on my phone and beating myself up while I'm doing it, right? So a good example of putting something like this into practice would be when I was trying to get off my phone, or like being on my phone in the morning. What I started doing was I actively set time aside in the mornings to scroll on my phone. It was time that I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do this anyway, but I don't want to do it as often as I was doing it. So I just set time aside to do it. I'm like, I'm going to scroll for 45 minutes today on my phone and just do it and enjoy the process of doing it. So that way, when I'm done, I don't have the feeling chasing me of like, I've wasted my time, I am worthless, I could have spent that time doing so many things, I'm not productive. I think none of that is helpful. It's not going to positively inspire you in any way. So if you're going to do something, make sure you're doing it and you're enjoying it as much as possible. Is the point that I'm actually trying to make. If you're going to leave the comfort of your home to go hang out with people, then you better make sure that you're going to enjoy being with them when you're there, and to not live your life in a waiting room, waiting for a particular thing to happen before you give yourself permission to enjoy being in your life. That is what it means to actually be present in your life. And I think that is not enough to just set the terms of what you want your life to look like, whether it is choosing to be child-free, choosing a certain career, choosing to not date, choosing to be with a certain person or a group of people, or choosing to be without certain people, right? It's not just enough to set the terms of your life, to make those choices. It is also imperative. It is your right to try as much as possible to enjoy those choices that you've made, you know. And back to like what I was talking about with self-respect, to not like spend most of your life trying to prove to people that you made the right choice. It can seem like a very thin line between like being happy with your choices versus performing happiness with your choices. I think that's a trap that we also sometimes fall into, right? Which is why like you're supposed to continuously check in, make sure that you are living a life that does bring you joy. I think the reason why it feels like it's easier for me to not feel bad about my life is because I refuse to not enjoy my life. Like it's so short. I'm so cognizant of it. I'm like our lives on this star in space, like it's so short. It seems long, and when you're not having fun, life does seem long, but it is short. I think it is too short for you to spend most of it not liking it, you know. And a good example is, I remember my dad asked me one time if I wasn't scared that I would regret making the choice to be child-free. He was like, what if like down the line, after like menopause or something, if you decide that you want a child and like you regret not having had one? The answer that I gave to him is the answer that I think like applies for a lot of different things in my life, and it is, I'll always be happy knowing that my regret is mine, that the choice that I made was mine, and so are the consequences of the choices that I made. And I'd rather live to regret a life that I chose based on choices that I made than to have lived and then come to regret making choices that were made for me, or that I made because I thought it would make me look good, or I thought it would help me tick certain boxes in society. The trade-off is actually quite easy for me. It's not a complicated decision. It's not a complicated choice for me. If I'm going to live and someday regret that I made a certain choice, I would be happy knowing that I made that choice by myself, and I'm not resentful of anybody else for having inspired me, or like resentful of myself for not making what was the best choice for me. And I'm hoping to inspire you to do the same, or like take a similar approach, you know? Because yeah, part of enjoying your life is acknowledging and getting comfortable with the fact that like it's going to be messy in the in-between, especially if you're making really bold choices. It doesn't have to be the boldest choice, but a bold choice for you. You know, if you're going against the grain in whatever little way that you are in the life that you're in, a lot of your life is going to be lived in the in-between, between where you are and where you want to be, where you think like your greatest happiness, better, best version of yourself is you have to enjoy being in the in-between and being open to the fact that it's going to be a little messy. The road is going to be a little topsy-turvy. It's not going to be smooth sailing all around. You will make mistakes. You will feel embarrassed. There will be times when it just feels like there's no momentum. You're not making any kind of progress in whatever you're doing, or you're just like feeling like you're not making progress within yourself, or you feel yourself like lapse a little bit and it feels like you've taken a huge personal growth step backwards, and this applies to even like personal failings, like when you find yourself, like telling a lie, not budgeting properly, or saying that you were going to go to the gym a certain amount of days and you find yourself not doing those things. I would say like falling off the wagon. I'm using this like extreme terms, but I don't know. Yeah, falling off the wagon on whatever goal you want to do is part of the process, and the only way that you won't get to your destination is if you let a slip and fall stop you from doing whatever it is that you want to do. But if you get up and you keep going and just acknowledge the fact that you've made a mess, like I said, like part of having self-respect is taking responsibility for the mistakes that you make, as well as embracing yourself and giving yourself a well-deserved pat on the back when you do show up the way you want to show up. Those two things, like you can't choose to denigrate yourself or to be disrespectful with yourself when you mess up and then want to celebrate yourself when you do well. Like those two things cannot coexist. You have to respect the work that you're putting in and have the courage to accept the ways in which you fall short and hold yourself accountable. That is part of love. You only hold the person that you love accountable. Accountability is not a bad thing. So you're going to make a mess. I hope you make a mess this week because it will be proof that you tried. You tried your best. Yeah, I'm done yapping. I hope this was helpful. It was helpful to me, so I'm hoping it was helpful to you. I am sending you all my love and lots of positive vibes going into the week or whenever you're seeing this. Yeah. Have a good week and thanks for hanging out with me. Yeah.